The ticket was in her hand, a thin rectangle of paper that was both salvation and a death sentence. Salvation because it promised to return her to the familiar, understandable world of bills, work shifts, and responsibility. A death sentence because, stepping into the Genoa airport building, she would leave behind the man who, in just a few days, had turned her universe upside down. Amelia Reed stood on the sun-drenched embankment, gazing at the snow-white yacht rocking gently on the azure water. There, on board, was he, Julian Thorn, a man from another world who, through some incredible mistake, had collided with hers. He awaited her decision. To stay was to dive into the unknown, into a fairy tale that could have any ending. To leave was to return to her former self, to the Amelia who existed before him, and she was painfully unsure which of them she wanted to be. Good day, friends. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe and give the video a like. The quiet beep of the heart monitor was the soundtrack of her life. Monotonous, alarming, never-ending. Amelia Reed, an intensive care nurse at Manchester General Hospital, had spent the last 12 hours listening to it. 12 hours on her feet, without a moment's rest. The night had been particularly difficult. A road accident on the highway, 3 victims in critical condition. She ran from one bed to the next, changing IVs, administering medications, monitoring the indicators that danced across the screens like frantic fireflies. Her hands worked automatically. Her mind was sharp as a scalpel, but her soul was exhausted. At 27, Amelia felt as drained as a lemon. 2 years ago, after the sudden death of her parents from an aortic aneurysm in her father and a subsequent heart attack in her mother, her life had become an endless race for survival. The full responsibility for her younger brother Leo, who had just turned 18, fell on her shoulders. She worked part-time, taking every night shift she could to pay for their small rented apartment and save for her brother's college education. Vacations became an impossible dream for her, something from a different, glamorous life. But 3 months ago, on a particularly gloomy evening, when yet another electricity bill seemed unbearable, she came across an ad online. Week-long Mediterranean cruise, all-inclusive, last-minute offer. The price was ridiculous, almost unrealistic. Amelia looked at the photos of the ship glistening in the sun, at the people laughing by the pool with cocktails in hand, and something inside her snapped. Enough. She couldn't go on like this. She deserved at least a week's respite. Leo was just about to leave for summer volunteer camp, and for the first time in 2 years, she was alone. With trembling fingers, she entered her credit card information and clicked buy. This cruise had become her guiding star, the only bright spot in a series of gray days. She was planning to board a plane in Nice, and her final destination was Barcelona, where her best friend Chloe, whom she hadn't seen in ages, lived. A perfect plan. And so, the day had arrived. After finishing her shift at 7 in the morning, Amelia barely made it home. A hot shower washed away the hospital smell, but couldn't wash away the deathly fatigue. She threw a couple of dresses, a swimsuit, and a book she'd been wanting to read for 6 months into an old backpack. A taxi to the airport, a quick flight to Nice, and there she was, standing in the huge, buzzing port terminal. The sun beat through the panoramic windows, blinding her eyes. Fatigue, mixed with lack of sleep and anxiety, created a thick fog in her head. She checked her e-ticket several times. Starlight Cruises, Terminal 3, check-in desk 12. She looked around. Signs were everywhere, but they all merged into one motley blur. Terminal 3. She saw a large arrow with the number 3, and grabbing her backpack, darted in that direction. She walked down a long corridor, past expensive boutiques and cafes. At some point, the flow of people split. The main crowd turned into a huge hall reminiscent of an airport lounge, but a small, elegantly dressed group continued on toward an inconspicuous door at the end of the corridor. Amelia followed them without thinking. It seemed logical to her that such a large airliner would have multiple check-in points. The door opened into a small, quiet, and cool room, finished in dark wood and leather. No lines, no fuss. Behind the polished marble counter stood a girl in an impeccably tailored dark blue uniform. She gave Amelia a dazzling smile. "Mademoiselle Reed, we're expecting you." Amelia blinked. How did they know her name? They must have looked it up on the passenger list. "Yes, it's me," she nodded, too tired to be surprised. "Excellent. Mr. Thorn is already on board. May I see your passport?" The girl took her passport, quickly flipped through it, and handed Amelia a plastic key card. "Your cabin is ready. Jean-Pierre will escort you on board." Before Amelia could say a word, a young man in a similar uniform emerged from behind the counter, grabbed her backpack, and with a polite smile pointed toward the exit to the pier. Everything was happening so quickly, so smoothly, that her foggy brain simply couldn't process the information. Who was Mr. Thorn? Probably some important guest or organizer. She walked down the gangway, feeling a gentle sway beneath her feet. The vessel they led her to was not what she expected. It was smaller than the giant liner in the advertising image. Sleek, predatory, with tinted windows and teak decks glistening in the sun. This was more than just a yacht. It was a floating palace. "Wait, I think there's been a mistake," she finally managed to say, as Jean-Pierre opened the glass door leading inside. "My cruise—" "Don't worry about a thing, mademoiselle," he cooed, taking the light jacket from her hands. "Mr. Thorn asked me to take care of your comfort." The interior was stunningly luxurious. Light skin, polished metal, live orchids in minimalist vases. The air was filled with the subtle scent of expensive perfume and the sea. In the depths of the main living room, his back to her, a man stood by the enormous picture window. He held a glass of amber liquid and gazed out at the receding shore. When the door closed silently behind Amelia, he slowly turned around. The first thing her mind registered was that he was young. Around 30, maybe a little older. Tall, with an athletic build that even his perfectly tailored linen suit couldn't hide. He had dark, slightly tousled hair and eyes so deep a blue that they seemed to reflect the sea itself. But the most striking thing about him was his expression. It was frozen with universal weariness, boredom, and a slight disdain for everything around him. He looked her over from head to toe. His eyes lingered on her faded jeans, plain cotton t-shirt, and old sneakers. A faint smile tugged at the corners of his lips. "You're definitely not Isabella," he said. It wasn't a question, but a statement of fact. His voice was low, velvety, with just the slightest hint of huskiness. "No, I'm Amelia Reed," she replied, clutching the phone in her hand as if it were a life preserver. "And I think I'm on the wrong ship." The yacht shook noticeably, and Amelia realized they had set sail. Panic began to rise from the pit of her stomach like an icy wave. "I need to get off. My ship is leaving for Barcelona." The man calmly sipped from his glass. "I'm afraid it's too late." We've just left French territorial waters. By the way, I'm Julian Thorn. Where are we going?" Amelia whispered, sinking onto the soft sofa. Her legs couldn't hold her anymore. "Portofino," he answered simply. "Italy?" Her voice broke into a squeak. "But I need to go to Spain. I have a friend there. I have a whole holiday planned." Julian Thorn studied her carefully. Something akin to curiosity flickered in his gaze. For the first time in a long time, his face came alive. "Tell me, Amelia Reed, how the hell did a nurse from Manchester manage to get past security at a private terminal and onto my yacht, intended for a very special guest?" He sat down in the chair opposite, and Amelia felt like a butterfly pinned to velvet. She began a halting story about the night shift, the fatigue, the confused signs, the girl at the counter who called her by her last name. "Isabella Reed," Julian said, understanding dawning on his face. "A model. She was supposed to accompany me on this trip. She must have changed her mind at the last minute, but she didn't bother to tell me. And my staff, seeing your last name in your passport, assumed you were her. They're trained to be inconspicuous and not to ask unnecessary questions." The utter absurdity of the situation crashed down on Amelia. She was on a billionaire's private yacht, sailing to Italy because she had been mistaken for a model with a similar last name. "This can't be," she muttered, covering her face with her hands. "I need to call Chloe, my brother. I need to get back somehow." "Calm down." Julian's voice was surprisingly gentle. "Panicking won't help matters. Look, it's about 10 hours to Portofino. We'll arrive late tonight. Tomorrow morning I'll arrange a flight for you to Barcelona, or wherever you say. This mess isn't your fault, although, I must admit, it's the most interesting thing that's happened to me in the last year." He stood up and walked over to the bar. "Would you like a drink? You look like you could use one." Amelia shook her head. "I don't drink on the job." "But you're not on the job," he chuckled. "You're an uninvited guest on a stranger's yacht. I suppose the rules can be bent a little." He poured some white wine into a glass and handed it to her. Her fingers brushed it, and a slight shiver ran through her. She took a sip. The cool, tart wine cleared her head a little. "What do you do, Amelia Reed?" he asked, sitting back down in the chair. And she, without knowing why, began to tell him. Perhaps it was the wine, or the shock, or the way he listened intently, without interrupting, without breaking his piercing blue gaze. She told him about the hospital, about Leo, about her parents, about how desperately she had been looking forward to this vacation. He listened, and the icy mask of boredom on his face gradually melted, replaced by a lively interest. "And you?" she asked when her stream of words dried up. "Why are you sailing to Portofino with a model who didn't even deign to show up?" A shadow crossed his face again. "Let's just say I'm trying to escape. From business, from people, from myself. I thought the company of a beautiful but empty doll was exactly what I needed. No emotions, no heart-to-heart talk, just a pretty picture against a beautiful backdrop. But apparently fate had other plans." He looked at her, and there was something new in his gaze. Not just curiosity, but recognition. As if he saw a kindred spirit in her, someone as tired and lonely as he was. The yacht moved steadily through the waves, carrying them further and further from the shore. out to the open sea, into the utter unknown. And for the first time in a long time, Amelia felt not fear, but a strange, exciting anticipation. When Amelia awoke, dawn was already breaking outside her cabin window. The eastern sky was painted in soft pink and peach hues. She had slept for almost 12 hours, deeply, for the first time in months, not startled awake by every noise. The cabin the steward showed her to was larger than her bedroom in Manchester. It had a huge bed with snow-white sheets, a marble bathroom, and a floor-to-ceiling window. She showered, found her only decent summer dress in her backpack, and went out onto the deck. Julian was already there, sitting at the breakfast table, reading something on his tablet. He wore shorts and a simple white t-shirt, and without his business suit, he looked younger and more approachable. "Good morning," he said, looking up at her. "You look rested." "I feel human," Amelia admitted, sitting down opposite him. "Thank you for all this." "No need. Consider it compensation for emotional distress," he smiled, and the smile transformed his face, making it look almost boyish. "I've already contacted my assistant. There's a direct flight from Genoa Airport to Barcelona at 2 o'clock. The car will be waiting for us at the port at noon." Amelia nodded, feeling a pang of disappointment. It was so simple. In a few hours, this fairy tale would end, and she would return to her reality. They ate breakfast in silence, broken only by the cries of seagulls and the lapping of the waves. The sun rose higher, bathing the deck in warm light. "So what exactly do you do?" Amelia asked, breaking the silence. "Your business, the one you're running away from." "IT," he answered reluctantly. "Developing cybersecurity systems. Boring, stressful work." "That doesn't sound like you," she noted. "What do I look like?" "A man who sails," she blurted out, then blushed. "Sorry, that was stupid." But Julian laughed. "You're almost right. Sailing is my only hobby, the only place where I can turn my head off. My father was obsessed with the sea. He taught me to sail when I was 7. This yacht, Serenity, is all I have left of him." He spoke of the sea with such warmth and love that Amelia was captivated. He told her about the regattas he had participated in, the storms he had encountered, the feeling of absolute freedom when there is only water and sky for hundreds of miles around. His stories contained none of the weariness and cynicism she had seen when they first met. As they entered the picturesque bay of Portofino, with its colorful houses clambering up the hillsides, Amelia felt her heart clench. She didn't want to leave. "We have a couple of hours before departure," Julian said, as if reading her thoughts. "Want to take a stroll around town?" They disembarked and lost themselves in the maze of narrow streets. Julian proved a surprisingly engaging guide. He showed her ancient churches, told her local legends, and treated her to the best gelato in the world. He was attentive, witty, and gallant. Amelia caught his gaze, warm and interested, and felt something fragile and tender blossom within her. She hadn't felt so desired in a long time. They sat in a small cafe on the square, drinking espresso, and Amelia knew that time was running out. "I have to go," she said quietly. Julian nodded, his face serious again. "The car is waiting." They walked to the port in silence. The tension between them became almost palpable. At the yacht's gangway, where the driver was waiting, Amelia stopped. "Thank you, Julian, for everything. It was unforgettable." "Amelia," he began, and fell silent. He looked at her as if he wanted to say something very important, but couldn't find the words. "Don't go." The words hung in the air. "What?" she whispered. "Stay," he repeated, taking a step towards her. "For a few more days." The yacht is designed for 12 guests, but right now it's just us and the crew. We could sail along the coast, visiting small towns where cruise ships don't go. I'll show you the real Italy. Amelia's heart was pounding. Her mind was screaming, "This is crazy! You have plans! You have a friend waiting for you! You can't do this!" But her heart was whispering, "When else will you get a chance like this? When else will you feel so alive?" "I can't," she said, although she no longer believed herself. "I need to go to Barcelona." "Okay," he agreed, unexpectedly easily. "Then let's sail to Barcelona." Amelia looked at him, dumbfounded. "But you had plans for Italy." "Screw the plans." He took her hand, and his touch burned her skin. "My business can wait, and meeting an interesting person is such a rare thing. So what do you say, Amelia Reed? Will you join me on a trip to Spain? I promise it will be more exciting than on your cruise ship." She looked into his sea-blue eyes and felt herself drowning in them. She knew it was recklessness, a gamble that could end in a broken heart. But at that moment, she didn't care. "I agree," she breathed. The smile that blossomed on his face was brighter than the Italian sun. He raised her hand to his lips and lightly kissed her fingertips. "Then welcome aboard the Serenity. For real." And as the yacht set out again into the open sea, heading west, Amelia looked at the receding shore and felt her own life changing course, rushing towards something new, exciting, and completely unpredictable. He looked at her as if he wanted to say something very important, but couldn't find the words. "Don't go." The words hung in the air. "What?" she whispered. "Stay," he repeated, taking a step towards her. "For a few more days." The yacht is designed for 12 guests, but right now it's just us and the crew on board. We could sail along the coast, visiting small towns where cruise ships don't go. I'll show you the real Italy. Amelia's heart started pounding. Her mind screamed, "This is madness. You have plans, a friend waiting for you. You can't do this." But her heart whispered, "When else will you get a chance like this? When else will you feel so alive?" "I can't," she said, although she no longer believed herself. "I need to go to Barcelona." "Okay," he agreed unexpectedly easily. "Then let's sail to Barcelona." Amelia looked at him, dumbfounded. "But you had plans for Italy." "Screw the plans." He took her hand, and his touch burned her skin. "My business can wait. And meeting an interesting person is such a rare thing. So what do you say, Amelia Reed? Will you join me on a trip to Spain? I promise it will be more interesting than on your cruise ship." She looked into his sea-blue eyes and realized that she was drowning in them. She knew it was recklessness, an adventure that could end in a broken heart. But at that moment, she didn't care. "I agree," she breathed. The smile that blossomed on his face was brighter than the Italian sun. He raised her hand to his lips and lightly kissed her fingertips. "Then welcome aboard the Serenity. For real." And as the yacht set out again into the open sea, heading west, Amelia looked at the receding shore and felt that her own life was also changing course, rushing towards something new, exciting, and completely unpredictable. He looked at her as if he wanted to say something very important but couldn't find the words. "Don't go." The words hung in the air. "What?" she whispered. "Stay," he repeated, taking a step towards her. "For a few more days." The yacht is designed for 12 guests, but right now it's just us and the crew on board. We could sail along the coast, visiting small towns where cruise ships don't go. I'll show you the real Italy. Amelia's heart started pounding. Her mind screamed, "This is madness." You have plans, a friend waiting for you. You can't do this. But her heart whispered, "When else will you get a chance like this? When else will you feel so alive?" "I can't," she said, although she no longer believed herself. "I need to go to Barcelona." "Okay," he agreed unexpectedly easily. "Then let's sail to Barcelona." Amelia looked at him, dumbfounded. "But you had plans for Italy." "Screw the plans." He took her hand, and his touch burned her skin. "My business can wait, and meeting an interesting person is such a rare thing. So what do you say, Amelia Reed? Will you join me on a trip to Spain? I promise it will be more interesting than on your cruise ship." She looked into his sea-blue eyes and realized that she was drowning in them. She knew it was recklessness, an adventure that could end in a broken heart. But at that moment, she didn't care. "I agree," she breathed. The smile that blossomed on his face was brighter than the Italian sun. He raised her hand to his lips and lightly kissed her fingertips. "Then welcome aboard the Serenity, for real." And as the yacht set out again into the open sea, heading west, Amelia looked at the receding shore and felt that her own life was also changing course, rushing towards something new, exciting, and completely unpredictable. "This will be more interesting than on your cruise ship." She looked into his sea-blue eyes and felt herself drowning in them. She knew it was reckless, a gamble that could end in a broken heart. But at that moment, she didn't care. "I agree," she breathed. The smile that blossomed on his face was brighter than the Italian sun. He raised her hand to his lips and lightly kissed her fingertips. "Then welcome aboard the Serenity, for real." And as the yacht set out into the open sea again, heading west, Amelia looked at the receding shore and felt her own life changing course, rushing towards something new, exciting, and completely unpredictable. "This will be more interesting than on your cruise ship." She looked into his sea-blue eyes and felt herself drowning in them. She knew it was reckless, a gamble that could end in a broken heart. But at that moment, she didn't care. "I agree," she breathed. The smile that blossomed on his face was brighter than the Italian sun. He raised her hand to his lips and lightly kissed her fingertips. "Then welcome aboard the Serenity, for real." And as the yacht set out into the open sea again, heading west, Amelia looked at the receding shore and felt her own life changing course, rushing towards something new, exciting, and completely unpredictable. The next few days became a living dream. They walked along the coast, and Julian kept his word. He showed her places not found in guidebooks. Tiny fishing villages tucked into rocky coves, secluded beaches with crystal-clear waters, accessible only by sea. They dined in small, family-run trattorias, where the owners welcomed Julian like an old friend. He spoke fluent Italian, and Amelia was surprised to learn that his mother was Italian. They spent days and nights together, and with each passing hour, Amelia got to know him better. She learned that behind the mask of a cynical billionaire lurked a man tired of loneliness and the falseness of his world. His business, founded from scratch, had become a gilded cage. He was surrounded by people who saw him as nothing more than a purse on legs. He told her about a difficult breakup with his fiancée, who, it turned out, was only with him for the money and status. The story left a deep scar on his heart, making him distrustful of people, especially women. Amelia, in turn, told him about her life, about how she loved her job, despite all its hardships, about Leo, a talented and intelligent boy who dreamed of becoming an architect, about how she sometimes felt scared and lonely, but she didn't allow herself to give in. They talked about everything: books, music, dreams, long breakfasts on deck, lazy days spent reading in deck chairs, evenings under the starry sky, which at sea seemed so close and bright. Amelia felt the ice in her soul, built up over the past 2 years, gradually melt under the warmth of his attention. And Julian, he was changing before our eyes. The fatigue and boredom disappeared from his face, giving way to smiles and a lively sparkle in his eyes. He joked and laughed a lot, and Amelia saw in him the boy who had gone sailing for the first time at the age of 7. One evening, as they stood on the bow of the yacht, watching the fiery sunset, he put his arm around her shoulders. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For showing up. You're real, Amelia. I've forgotten what it's like to be with a real person." He turned her toward him and, before she could respond, kissed her tenderly. That kiss was unlike any other in her life. It was full of tenderness, longing, and nascent hope. And Amelia responded with all the passion she could muster. In that moment, she knew she was lost. She had fallen in love with this complex, wounded, handsome man. And it was both beautiful and terrifying. As they approached Barcelona, Amelia was overcome with excitement. Meeting Chloe, the reality that was about to burst into their little perfect world on the yacht. She called her friend from the port. "Amy, where have you been? I've already got the police on alert. Your cruise line said you didn't check in." "Chloe, calm down. I'm fine. It's a long story. I'm in the port of Barcelona now. Can you come?" Half an hour later, Chloe flew into the port terminal, where Amelia was waiting for her. "Oh my God, Amy, I'm going crazy." "What happened?" Amelia took a deep breath. "Come on, I'll introduce you to someone." She led her stunned friend to the Serenity. Julian met them on deck. He was dressed in simple jeans and a polo shirt, but even so, he looked like a god descended from Olympus. Chloe was speechless. "Chloe, this is Julian. Julian, this is my best friend, Chloe." While Amelia was telling her friend the entire incredible story of how they met, her friend's gaze shifted from the beaming Amelia to the equally beaming Julian, who couldn't take his loving eyes off her friend. "So, am I right?" Chloe finally said when the story was finished. "You mixed up the ships, accidentally ended up on a billionaire's yacht, and now you're in love and sailing off into the sunset together?" "Well, yeah, basically," Amelia smiled sheepishly. Chloe burst out laughing. "Amy, that's the craziest, most romantic story I've ever heard. It could only happen to you." They spent 3 days in Barcelona. Julian rented a luxurious hotel room with a sea view, but most of the time they spent together. They strolled through the Gothic quarter, ate paella in small restaurants, laughed and chatted non-stop. Chloe was delighted with Julian, and he, to Amelia's surprise, didn't seem out of place in their simple world at all. He listens with interest to Chloe's stories about her work at the art gallery, joked, and acted like a normal guy in love with her friend. On the last evening before Amelia's departure, they sat on the hotel terrace, looking out over the city at night. "I have to leave tomorrow," Amelia said quietly, her heart aching with longing. Julian took her hand. "This isn't the end, Amy. This is just the beginning." "But how?" Her voice was tinged with desperation. "We live in different worlds. I'm a nurse from Manchester. You—" "I'm a man who loves you," he interrupted. "And I'll do anything to make sure we're together. I can move part of my business to London. It's only an hour's flight from Manchester. We'll see each other every weekend. And Leo, I want to help him with college." "No, Julian, I can't accept money from you," she said firmly. "It's not money, it's an investment. In the future of a talented boy and in our future together. I'll create an educational foundation. It will be not only for Leo, but for other talented kids from poor families. You will help me manage it. What do you say?" Tears welled up in her eyes. He wasn't just offering her money. He was offering her a partnership, a shared goal. He saw her not as a poor relative, but as an equal. "I'll tell you I love you, Julian Thorn," she whispered. "And I love you, Amelia Reed," he replied, pulling her to him for a kiss. The next day he saw her off at the airport. It hadn't been easy, but there was no hopelessness in their farewell. There was confidence that something real and beautiful lay ahead. Back in Manchester, Amelia felt changed. She still worked at the hospital, still cared for Leo, but the fear and hopelessness had vanished from her life. Hope and love were born. Julian kept his word. He called every day, flew in every weekend. He met Leo, and they hit it off surprisingly quickly. He created a foundation, and Amelia threw herself into a new yet captivating job. Her life became filled with meaning she had never dreamed possible. A year later, on the anniversary of their chance meeting, Julian proposed. On the bow of that same yacht, Serenity, in the very same Portofino bay where their story had begun. And of course, she said yes. Sometimes, falling asleep in the arms of her beloved man, Amelia recalled that day in the port of Nice, her fatigue and confusion, and she thanked fate for the mistake that had led her onto the wrong ship, but gifted her with a lifetime of love and serenity. If you liked this story, please leave your thoughts in the comments and give the video a like. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell. See you next time.